The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we will review the Colorado match. We'll also talk about the first ever Austin FC 2 match and quite a bit of other Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and landed for a week that only had one game. I felt like it was very, very soccery. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
but
our notes are pretty full at the moment.
Yeah, so I think for me, I ended up at the stadium on Wednesday night at a 4ATX Foundation event where they talked to some of the kids from Faraday Leaders and the kids that had kind of graduated out of that program into being coaches, which is one of the cool things they do with that. Is they like take the kids that were in the program, eventually get out of middle school, get into high school, and they become like sort of the volunteers for the program. And I ended up seeing this kid that I ended up buying like 50-50 raffle tickets from every game who's in the Faraday Leaders program, but also one of the volunteers. So it was kind of fun. And we got to meet some players, got to meet it's an interesting combination. It was Brad Stuver, Sofiane Jafal, Danny Pereira, and Matt Bersano. So I don't know if they just happened to be the guys that were around, but
yeah, I wonder if they like draw straws for that kind of stuff or what.
So obviously Danny and Brad spoke, and I'm not sure exactly what Jafal and Bersano are doing there, but I was reminded a little bit about how like soccer players are generally kind of small humans. and Jafal particularly looks like really, really young. Danny is really, really young, and I think
they're around the same age.
They're the same age. Okay, yeah.
Maybe Jafal may be a touch older, but not much.
I was like, who's this high school kid? I was like, oh wait, he's playing for the Austin FC. And as we'll talk about later, had some meaningful minutes. And then on Friday, you had the FC2 match.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday, we had a game. We had the first team match. And then Sunday, we were together at the Laundry Project. So it was a long week of soccer. Yeah,
the Laundry Project thing ended up being a lot of fun. We'll get into this a little bit more on next week's show. But we got a chance to just hang out with Brad Stuver's parents for a long time.
Yeah, that was they were really cool. And so like, I kind of missed this. I mean, we kind of know that they kind of keep up with everything online. But Brad's dad he's an official, is that right? Or was for a long time?
I think he was a USL official at one point. So like pretty high level, and then he like was one like in leadership of the like referees association in their area of Ohio as well. So, and I think we probably won't have time to talk about this next week, but he essentially, he was saying that Brad and his brother went to take a refereeing course because they were going to do that as like their summer job to make some extra money. And so he's like, well, I have to drive him there anyway, so I might as well take the course. And like, they were not a soccer family at all. And he got into it and like kind of got interested in refereeing and then became like a decent level referee. I think he has another job as well, but just got into it because his kids were doing it essentially, and then ended up being pretty good at it and got pretty into it.
Yeah, so they were not surprisingly delightful, fun people who may be listening. So, like, shout out to Ronald again, checking it out. And then also, we got a bunch of reviews last week. We talked about how we were going to donate some money to the Laundry Project based upon listener reviews. I think we ended up with 8 or 9 last week, and then we wanted to remind everybody that it's still open through Saturday, so through April 1st. So, leave us a review. Let us know what you think about what we're doing. And it's like super fun for us to read. And we got some Swoon Tower specific reviews, but I think we still get to claim credit for those, right?
Yeah. Feel free to leave it for them. We still get the 5-star credit in our total ratings.
Right. And they have some cool stuff lined up too. So if you haven't listened to Swoon Tower, you should listen to Swoon Tower if you don't listen to Swoon Tower. And then also like check out the episode that's coming out in the next couple of weeks, because like it'll be a very fun episode too.
Oh yeah. All right. We have a lot of news to get to, Jeremiah, so let's jump into that.
All right, let's do it. So on Tuesday, so one day later than when we usually get Green Smoke, so the show was actually out, so it didn't completely ruin it. We saw that, I think, very surprising post from Anthony Precourt. I don't think people knew what to expect. We're expecting anything, and I think this is one of those where there was not a lot of, I don't think there was any like pre-signing chatter, which is very rare for these kinds of moves. Usually by the time that we get to the smoke tweet, everybody kind of knows what's going on. So Okay, I'm going to go with this one. Alexander Radovanovic. Radovanovic. How about that?
I think that's right.
Okay, so we got that on Wednesday. Austin FC announced the club reached an agreement. I'm not going to read the team that he came from the Belgian Jupiler Pro League.
Kortrijk. I've actually been there. I know how to say that.
Kortrijk. Oh, cool. Yeah, you have more Serbian experience than I expected anybody
this
to
is
have.
in Belgium, though.
Oh, this is a Belgian club? Okay,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah, he's Serbian, but the club's in Belgium. To require defender on loan, will join Austin FC through June 30th, 2023, in a deal which includes a transfer option. I guess let's talk about that deal term. Do we think that this is in any way related to the Musajite loan deal? Because I think Austin might be at the capacity on international signings. So it's kind of one or the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but like we can get into this here in a second. It doesn't seem like Kortrijk wants him anymore. And there's some apparently some beef between him and the coach. And then, like, talking about Musajite, like I don't foresee him coming back either. And so maybe there is like that option to, like, if everything goes pear-shaped and we have to bring Gite back for whatever reason and can't get him off, we have the option to make that spot open for him again. But it kind of seems like the idea would be for both of these moves to be permanent. At least that's how I see it. Do you think that's true?
I think that's probably true, but I think I can see with the timing that the club's leaving the flexibility open. I think, and we maybe go into this in terms of like when we expect to see the player, but like this incoming move seems like one that's positioned for the long term. Like there's not a lot of immediate benefit out of it, probably to Austin FC. So I would agree. Like generally, that's what I expect to see. So this tweet comes out, right? The announcement comes out, and everybody's like, "What should I think?" And obviously, there's not a ton of video or anything on him. So I think you did go back and watch some. Do you want to give like a kind of a quick, high level overview of how he is as a player, maybe how he fits in?
Yeah, for sure. So there is a highlight reel kind of going around. And I think what you see in that highlight reel is decent size. And he's listed as 6'2", and then depending on what website you look at, anywhere from 175 to 185. So pretty good size, but has decent mobility as well. So he moves pretty well. He's a very bold defender, pretty aggressive in the tackle, goes to ground a lot, will lunge out and poke balls away in kind of risky situations. So maybe a touch card prone. I kind of looked at his card record, and him and Cascante are pretty close to the same age. I think Radovanovic has played a little bit more as far as like matches played, has a slightly higher number, but Radovanovic has 28 yellow cards in his career and 2 red cards, and Cascante has 15 yellow cards and 2 red cards. So maybe a little bit card prone, but definitely an aggressive player. Going back and watching some, not full games, but like pretty much every action of his in a handful of games, I feel like what I learned there is that he has really soft feet when receiving the ball, very comfortable playing out of the back, which is not surprising based on the kind of center backs we've seen come in recently and the guys that Wolf plays more often than not. I'd say he's a pretty good passer, like on the scale of Leo Väisänen being very good. I would put Radovanovic as pretty good. The like shorter passes, he plays the ball cleanly, really smooth with the ball at his feet, but on those longer ones where Väisänen seems to make it look pretty effortless and is pretty accurate, this guy is not as much there on the longer ones. And so I think as far as like comparing him to guys we've had, I think like aggression and athleticism, I think he's like maybe closer to the Gabrielson's side of the scale. And then probably a little bit smoother with the ball at his feet than Gabrielson was, but maybe not quite as good of a passer, and definitely not as good of a passer as Väisänen is.
So you brought this up a little bit. He has not seen very much action lately, and there's a lot of questions about that. And so from what you've seen, it seems to be like a not fitting in the system or having a falling out with a coach thing, and not like a not playing because he's not good enough thing. That's my take. I saw a lot of people in this very Slack kind of pulling
articles from Belgium and from various places and having them translated. And there's open quotes back and forth from the coach and the player kind of defending their side. But it's very clear that they didn't get along for one reason or another. And neither of them were hiding that. And so it seems like he just got kind of punished and dropped for all of it. But in the games that I saw, and I specifically tried to find games where they played the better teams in Belgium, and to kind of give a rating of like where that sits, like this is not an exact science, but if you look at like 538's ratings as far as like how they rank different countries' leagues in world soccer, Belgium is listed as higher than MLS, but I think like the best Belgian teams would be at the top of MLS and the worst Belgian teams would be at the bottom of MLS. Like it's a much wider window there. And so I was trying to watch the teams who were on the top end of that league that year. And he looked like one of the better players on that Kortrijk team. And so, yeah, I definitely believe that he did not get dropped because of his quality, but more so because of a falling out with the coach. So quality wise, and it's also worth mentioning that the first time we heard this guy's name, he was being connected to the Columbus Crew. And so I don't know if that was like a weird, I guess just discovery rights don't exist anymore.
That's right. I can never remember. Yeah. No, wait, discovery rights do.
Oh yeah,
doesn't, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Never mind. So that may have been a weird thing where like I don't know, Kevin Arriaga was linked with us first, and it turns out they were just going to buy those rights from us all the time. So it may be something like that. But he had been linked with an MLS club before. I think he's at the level where once he gets kind of gets bedded into the team, I think his level will be good enough to contribute to this team.
Yeah, it's just a couple other quick notes. So you mentioned sort of similarities to Julio's 29. It's left-footed, which is always helpful. And just like everybody else, like his one quote, which I'm sure he probably did not write or say himself, is that the club has an incredible fan base, and I can't wait to play at Q2 Stadium for the first time. So I love that all these players continue to send shouts out to the fans, even if somebody in the front office is writing that for them or not.
So when are we actually going to see this guy?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. This is a discussion we had about immigration in the EU. So if you were to line that up with when Leo Väisänen signed and when Ruben Gabrielsen signed, would be a possibility that it would sort of be around the LA Galaxy match on April 22nd, which would be about 4 weeks. But you were pointing out that may not be that simple.
Yes, Serbia is not a member of the EU. Historically has not had great relations with the United States. I know it's getting better in recent years, but not sure how long it's going to take a Serbian citizen to get a visa to get into the United States. And maybe we could find some other examples in MLS to see how that worked. But yeah, I have no clue how long it's going to take him. And then luckily, I know he hadn't been playing games, but he has been training. Like he's in mid-season training form, if nothing else. I know that's not the same as game fit, but it's better than off-season fit.
Yeah, and it's a possibility that he doesn't come in before around the time that Julio comes back. So one has to imagine that this is a longer term than just like a stopgap signing for Cascante being out on injury, which I think we've talked about before is probably the way to go. But this seems to be something. One, I mean, it's all loan, so obviously he's going to have some time with Austin FC, and if it doesn't work out, he can always go back. But you'd imagine this is more of a longer term signing than just this stopgap move. I'd imagine if I was Amro Tarek, I would be a little bit worried about ever like playing a minute again, given whom Austin has brought in. But yeah, it seems to be a decent depth option at center back.
Let's move on to Väisänen and Wolf's international breaks. So Väisänen, of course, is playing in Euro qualifiers for Finland. Their first game, they lost 3-1 to Denmark. I got to watch a little bit of that and then had to turn it off and leave. And then they beat Northern Ireland 1-0 the other day. I think he played 90 in both of these games, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
And I'm not sure how well he played. If we're to believe FotMob ratings, he got a 5.8 in the Denmark one, which is not surprising of a team that gives up 3 goals when you're playing center back. But and then a 7.4 against Northern Ireland. So Not sure without having watched all of those games exactly how he did, but cool that he's starting for him.
Yeah, I was going to say that the other one's also probably not surprising if you're starting at center back for a club that gives up no goals. So I think he just kind of
Yeah.
performed online with how the team did. I didn't realize this. I was looking at like the Euro qualifier table. So this is the first and second of 10 matches. I didn't realize that Euro qualifying had so many.
It's pretty extensive.
Pretty intense.
Yeah.
So
Owen Wolf is with the US U20s. I don't believe he played in their first game, but then played in the second game against England. He ended up scoring a 2-2 equalizer. They went on and lost that game 4-2 against England, but they finally posted like a field level video of his goal. Were you able to see that?
I did. It was a pretty little goal.
Yeah, a back heel in the box. It was really cool. Their last game is going to be on Tuesday morning. So by the time you're hearing this, it likely will have already happened. I'm not sure if he'll get minutes or not, but yeah, very cool to see them both contributing to their teams. And then as much as it hurts the first team to have them gone, hopefully that will be less of an issue next time an international window comes around.
Yeah, hopefully so. Well, let's talk about, before we get into the Austin ATXII, or what, FCito, I think is
Austin
another.
FCito.
or Verdos, I think is Phil West's favorite phrase for this team. There were some moves. So there were 5 players, I believe, being loaned down from the senior team, and then several academy players added as amateur players to the club. But maybe talk about, I don't know that I knew that players were going to be loaned down for the first team officially. I thought they could just kind of play down. And is there, do we know why?
From what I understand, this is just something that needs to happen in order for these guys to play for the second team. I don't think it affects their first team status at all. I think all of these guys can still play for the first team. But yeah, I was under the impression that any first team player could play down at any point in time, but it seems like maybe this loan mechanism is something that's necessary, but I still don't fully understand it. But I think if nothing else, it's a sign of intent of which of the first team players are likely going to be playing a lot of their minutes with the second team. And then also a view into which of the academy players will likely be getting looks up at times as well.
So before we go into any of them, let's just quickly, before we talk about any of them, let's go quickly through the names. So the guys loaned down were Charlie Asensio, CJ Fodre, Kip Keller, Damian Loss, and Alfonso Campo Chavez. Then the academy players up are Brian Ariano, Jordan Franco, Nick Kashambuzi, Spencer Sanderson, and Irvin Torres. And I get the first team players going down. Like, I'm not at all surprised that this is the list of. This is like, if you told me there were 5 going down, it's exactly them. So like, knowing how much academy stuff you watch, like, are these the guys you would expect to have seen, or are you a little bit surprised by any of them?
Not surprised by some of them. Brian Ariano and Jordan Franco are actually players who have aged out of the academy already, so they didn't have a team to play on anyway. And then I know that like that first game when that last practice game when Austin FC played, was it Louisville? When the second team was playing on the other pitch at the same time, it was the other U17 keeper who was suited up with them that day. And so that's a little surprising. Like, Charlie Reed was the one suited up with them, and now Spencer Sanderson is the one who is being listed as signed to this amateur agreement. And then also Drake Fournier is one of the better players on that U17 team and is usually the captain. And his center back partner, Nick Kashambuzi, who's also very good, but interesting to not see Drake's name on there. I know he committed to St. Louis University recently, so maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out and how much time any of these guys end up actually getting. When we get into the Austin FC2 game here in a little bit, it may not matter much. These guys may end up spending more time with the academy anyway.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we saw this week is that Micah Burton was officially announced to have the MLS Next Pro contract, being the second player to officially sign that agreement for Austin FC. So we're they're at 20, I think it's 28 players. So it is deep and filled out. We were a little bit worried, I feel like, a couple months ago on how Austin was going to get there, but we have a pretty good picture of who's going to be on the Austin FC2 roster.
Yeah, so talking about this Michael Burton deal, this one is a little bit surprising to me. I know we were talking last week about how it's not a frequent trend, but there is some instances of players turning down these kinds of deals because they want either that first team deal and promise of minutes, or they're going to go somewhere else. I think this is a sign that Michael Burton's happy here, and with whatever promises Austin has made to him, he seems happy with it to be signing this second team deal and not holding out for a homegrown contract. He is signed to, like, he has a professional agent. He's with Wasserman Group, which is an agency that represents a lot of MLS players. And so he had professional counsel on this, I'm guessing. I don't know if this is like a deal, like maybe they promise like after X amount of time, it will roll into a homegrown deal or something, but a little surprising to see him getting this MLS Next Pro deal instead of a homegrown, if he's going to get a contract at all at this point.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's true. And you wouldn't think that they would suddenly transfer that or anything. So do you want to talk about?
I think they could, though. Like, I don't think it would be hard for them to turn it into a homegrown contract at some point, but it doesn't seem that's in the immediate plans in the next few months even.
Yeah, I guess at some point, if there becomes competition for him, that's like a good thing to have in your back pocket to be able to do. Do you want to talk about the match itself now? Yeah, for
sure. So it's Austin FC versus Houston Dynamo 2. Austin FC 2 versus Houston Dynamo 2. It ended 2-1 to Austin. It was sold out. I think capacity there is 800. Is that right?
I thought it was 1,200. It was sold out.
In any case, they sold every ticket that they could, and the stands
turned
were
people
full.
Away. And I read that on Twitter, at least. I didn't go, but yeah, they were like, people just thought they would show up and go. So it's a pretty impressive turnout for the first match.
Yeah, and the atmosphere is really fun. I ran into Andy Loughnane, Austin FC president, at halftime outside of the stadium, because they give you a wristband and you walk out to the pitch. That's like their concession stand, is the pitch out there with all their little bars and restaurants. And so I went out there at halftime, and Andy was out there and bumped into him, and he was just like asking how the experience was. Like, he just like, I think he was out there just talking to people, seeing how they found it. And I had said something that I told him it was good, that I had a lot of fun, but I said that it felt like a high school football game. That's something I told him. And later on, my wife asked, like, do you think Andy Loughnane liked it when you told him it felt like a high school football game? And I was like, where I'm from, that's a compliment. Like, I meant that as a compliment. It was a lot of fun, but it was like intimate, and everyone kind of knew each other. There were families sitting up in the stands, and it was still rowdy, but like small and intimate at the same time. And so I meant it as a compliment. So Andy, if this gets back to you, if you're listening, I had a great time. I thought it was a really good thing. And whenever I say it's like a high school football game, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and somebody else told me that. I think it was Jana, a listener who we met at Hop Squad.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think was independent of you, said the same thing to me when we were talking about what it was like. So I think that, I think it is good. I think it was Katie Ensign talked about it. It was a great gathering of like all the people who have been behind all the things for Austin FC for so long, plus like everybody's family and friends. It's like, it was just a really cool, like, different kind of environment because it was so intimate.
Yeah, and Coach Wolf and his youngest son, Gavin, were sitting down. There's like a little like VIP/media area down outside of the stands. And so like at one point in the front of the bleachers there, you look down to your left and Josh Wolf is just sitting like crisscross applesauce on the ground with Gavin sitting next to him. And some people down there told me that like he was just like talking to Gavin the whole game, like pointing out tactics and like pointing out things that were happening on the field and talking to him. And then I think like several of the first team players were there. Brad Stuver was there with his parents and his grandparents sitting up in the stands. A lot of the academy players are up in the stands. And so it was just a really cool environment all around.
That is really cool. So like results, Austin goes, so there's nothing in the first half, right? No goals in the first half. Austin goes down on a Houston goal, and then Valentin Noel scores twice in the second half, and Austin pulls away with the 2-1 victory. Is there anybody in particular you want to talk about player wise? Like I've heard that when Fodre came in, that sort of made a real difference. Obviously, Valentin Noel scoring 2 goals had a pretty good match.
Yeah, based on what we saw in this game, EJ Johnson started on the left wing in this game. Fodre is coming back from an injury. I think based on what we've seen in this game, once Fodre is fit to start, he's the starter. He looked a lot better on that side. The 2 players that stood out the most to me in this game were Valentin Noel, of course, did well scoring those 2 goals, but the one who was like the most eye-catching on the field was David Rodriguez. He scored a few goals in preseason with the first team, but he was playing alongside Noel as one of probably a bit more attacking than Noel was. Noel was sitting slightly deeper for a lot of the game. But he would get on the ball and just go. He just drives at people and really electric on the ball. And like I was sitting close to Mike Cragnola, and we were kind of comparing the 2 guys, and he was like, it looks like Noel like has a plan and kind of knows exactly what's going on. And Rodriguez, whenever he receives the ball, he's just like, I'm just going to go and ask questions later. But he was exciting to watch. So those 2 guys definitely look good. Charlie Asensio looked solid. Kip Keller had a solid game. Sal Mazzaferro, the other center back, looked solid as well. And then surprisingly enough, Joe Hafferty, who was announced just like last week, he came in from Tacoma Defiance. And I think he's 24 years old, but started at right back and was wearing the captain's armband, surprisingly enough. But maybe that's based on experience. I'm not sure how long he's actually been in camp with the team to be given that captain's armband, but he looked solid. He was definitely he looked one of the more experienced players out there.
And was like, as far as age and experience goes, were Houston Austin kind of on the same level, or like could you tell?
I would say for the most part, Houston actually started a guy who is probably going to be their starter at left back on the first team soon. I think he had like some visa delays and they're playing him with this team to get him up to like match fit. But I think once he is fit enough to play for them, he might even be the starter until Brad Smith is fit enough to be their starter at left back. But I think for the most part, the rest of the team was pretty even. Like it was a lot of guys around the same age. Houston also started Beto Avila, which is an Austin kid, played for the Bulls for a while. And I know there's some people disappointed that Austin FC kind of let him go, but we didn't have a place to put him at the time. And I think that's kind of telling, like he's still on their second team there. I think he maybe has a first team contract. I'm not sure, but that was fun to have like another Austin kid in town playing against him as well. But the game itself was like, it wasn't always super pretty. It was kind of a dogfight. And this leads into kind of one of the points that I noticed at the game. I was very curious to see which of the academy kids would be on this match day roster and who might get minutes. So Anthony Deanda, who has a contract with Austin FC too, I think he's still just like 17, 18 years old, but he's been playing a lot with this team. He wasn't even on the match day roster. I think when you send Charlie Asensio down, Charlie's instantly the starter. And Micah Burton was not on the roster. Nate Cashinbuzi not on the roster. Irvin Torres not on the roster. So like all these top academy prospects did not even make the match day roster for this team. And I was talking to one of the academy parents who I've kind of become friendly with by going out to all the academy games, and asked him about it. I was like, which of the academy, like, are these academy guys gonna get some time with this team? And he's like, oh, they don't want any part of this right now. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, like it's a fight, man. Like, and I believe, like, I see what he's talking about. Like, he said that he was talking to like his son and some of the players, and they're like, oh yeah, these are like grown men out here playing soccer, and it stops being a game, right? And I think Hernan was saying that like he had talked to some of the actual players, like these guys who didn't make the game day roster, and that they seemed disappointed to not make it. But that's the difference between the academy and even this second team, is these are grown men who are paying their bills with this. Like, this is a game to you. This is like the fun thing you do with your friends. And I know these kids take it really seriously and they've been doing it at a high level, but it's different whenever you have kids to feed or bills to pay or whatever it is. Like, if you think you're going to just mosey in and take this guy's job, like, that's not going to happen. These guys are going to fight you for it. And I think it's a good lesson for these kids to learn. Like, they need to know that they're going to have to fight to make it as a pro. And this is kind of that first lesson for a lot of them, probably.
Yeah, it'll be a good lesson for us. So, like, you mentioned Kip Keller. This is his first action since the disaster against St. Louis. Like, it seemed like he had a pretty good match, and it seemed like he had a lot of support.
Yeah,
from the stands, which I think is great. And this is what I hope for. This is probably the most beautiful difference between like Austin FC online fans and Austin FC real world fans is like the way they treat a situation like Kip Keller.
Oh man, he was treated like a king at the end of the game, and he very much appreciated it. He loved it. As far as his performance goes, he played well. If you'd have told me between him and Matsufero, like one of these guys is on the first team, and I didn't know the difference, I don't know if I could have told the difference between which one it was. But both of them played well. But yeah, afterwards to see all the guys celebrating, and they would run up to that. I was sitting right next to where the big supporter section was, and they had a couple of drums up in the stands, and they would always run up right there for the goals. And then after the game, they would run up, and it was really cool to just be like right there in, again, like a high school football game where you can just like see their faces and they can like actually interact with you in the stands and stuff. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, Kippy was definitely enjoying himself.
That's awesome. Are there any other players you want to talk about before we go into the draw from this week?
I don't think so. We'll have some more time to talk about these guys later on.
All right. Well, let's maybe take a break, and then we'll talk about the Colorado Rapids match.
All right. Hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Covert Auto Group. Covert Auto Group has been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
What kind of cars were they selling 114 years ago?
That's a really good question. I bet
Was it just Model Ts, or did they...
It's like Fords designed by Henry Ford himself. Maybe personally built and delivered by Henry Ford. I don't know.
He drove them all to Austin. In addition to supporting Austin car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community. If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle or a Model T, be sure to check out covertauto.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. We'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match soon, so be sure to check out the show notes and on moontowersoccer.com for more information on that giveaway.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty, so if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. You can find them at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. Now we're going to talk about Austin FC's draw at home against Colorado Rapids. Austin played a makeshift back line, only gave up 1 goal on 17 shots. Probably could have been a little bit worse if not for a stellar performance from Brad Stuver. But it's one of these draws that kind of felt like a loss a little bit.
It really did. One, I think, obviously there are expectations when you're playing the team that is at the bottom of the table at home, because I don't know if we talk about this a lot, but Major League Soccer is a league where home field advantage counts for a lot. And so like dropping any points at home is not great, especially when you're playing a club like Colorado. And then just the way the match unfolded, again, even with Austin up 1-0, like I never really felt like Austin was on the front foot a lot. Like it seemed like Austin was sitting back for many reasons, which we can get into later. Part of it being just like we're playing a makeshift lineup. Like you said, like luckily Brad Stuver was amazing, but it never really felt like Austin was going to like build a lead. And then when the goal finally came for Colorado, like I became worried that we would have one of those performances like in 2021 where Austin gave up a goal and they quickly gave up a second goal because just this team kind of got down. So there's like a lot of things that were just a little bit off in this match. I think before we even talked about it, I saw this a little bit on Twitter, like even just the vibe in the stands, like from the stadium seemed like not great. It was like a weird night all the way around.
Yeah, it really was. Do we want to start with kind of the lineup and how the team
let's go through that. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's pretty much what we predicted last week, wasn't it? Were there any surprises from what we thought it was going to be?
No, I don't think there were any surprises from last week. Just
given we kind of expected that back three to be Ring, Lima, and either Kolmanich or Lundqvist. Ended up being Kolmanich, so Lima being a nominal center back in this setup. And then I think the only other questions we had were Finley or Fagundes. It ended up being Finley, which
we kind of talked about too. Because
Josh Wolf also gave some info in the post-game press conference that seemed to shine a little bit of light on why that was. And then in the midfield, it was Valencia. We kind of thought maybe it could be Sofian Jeffal, but it ended up being Valencia again in this one. The shape that we saw, I saw, who was it? Kevin Trahan, I believe, on Twitter posted a screenshot of FotMob or OneFootball or one of those apps that kind of gives you lineups and stats on games. And they had Austin posted in a 3-4-3. I know most people listening to this know that I almost never trust those lineup graphics, especially from these like automated ones that's not actually a human putting them together most of the time. I actually think they got this one right. Austin really was set up in a 3-4-3 for a lot of the game. So Colorado plays a back three, so like three center backs and then wing backs on the side. So Austin kind of matched them defensively with their shape. That means Ethan Finley was marking their wing back Keegan Rosenberry and was marking him all the way down the field. And then Gallagher was doing the same to Sam Nicholson on the other side. So as Colorado progressed up the field, Austin ended up in more or less a back five. And John Kolmanich was playing more or less as like a real center back and marking towards the interior, and ended up being like, if he's on the backside covering Jonathan Lewis, who was playing more or less as their striker, or Cole Bassett, who's like a attacking midfielder on that side. And so that was kind of the defending shape. And then as we moved forward, it was still pretty similar to that. Instead of Gallagher pushing all the way up high and being like one of the highest three, he would stay a little bit deeper than Rigoni. And so it really did look like offensively and defensively more or less like a 3-4-3 instead of that 3-2-2-3 attacking shape we've become used to over the last few games.
So I think, do you want to go through the goals, or you want to like just talk? Let's just cover those really quickly.
Yeah, we can do the goals.
And then I have some high level stuff that actually ties back to what you just talked about. So the first one comes 5 minutes in. John Gallagher, assist from Sebastian Driussi and Johan Valencia. But like John Gallagher, did you expect him to be the offensive force that he's been so far this season compared to everybody else? Like, not me.
I mean, before preseason, no, I did not expect it. But from what we've seen from him this year, I'm like not surprised that he keeps getting those chances, because it's the position we're playing him in, and he's helping create those opportunities for himself. So I'm not surprised now, but if you'd asked me 2 months ago, I would have been.
Yeah. And then Kevin Cabral gets the tying goal at 85 minutes, the assist from Michael Barrio. So I feel like it's a guy that just always causes trouble for Austin. Just the speed. He seems to be able to run past anybody Austin has. Then Brian Acosta on that. And then there wasn't a lot. Once it gets to 1-1, there wasn't a lot going on after that, other than a few amazing Brad Stuber saves.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning sorry, what was the bigger picture stuff you wanted to talk about?
Well, the bigger picture I wanted to talk about, you just talked about how Colorado lined up, and I feel like Austin was mirroring that. So my question is, I think that kind of answers it. Like, do you feel like Austin was like had an attacking game plan, or was it just reactive? And if so, if Austin was playing reactive, like why is Austin playing reactive at home against Colorado?
I think there was a game plan. I think they were struggling to execute upon it. In the post-game press conference, Josh Wolf said that like when Gallagher scored and then late on, Rodney Redez gets a chance pretty late on in the 80 some odd minute after Colorado already scored. Both very similar goals where a player from the midfield dribbled and created some space by carrying the ball forward or like dribbling around a guy, making that backline scramble. And then as that's happening, one of the wide players making a run in behind that line and the midfielder finding a gap to play the ball through. I think that was supposed to be what they're looking for more often than not. But I think a few things stopped them from doing that. I think partially Austin just not connecting and playing cleanly enough. Also, Austin seemed like they're like a little bit in their head. Maybe it's trying to work in this new system. Maybe it's guys not consistently having the same guys in the field, not knowing how to play with each other. I think it's probably a combination of all of the above and maybe a few other things. But I think that's what they were supposed to be doing and supposed to be creating, and it's just not working out. And so it ends up with just a bunch of guys on the back line and us crossing it in again, which is part of the game plan, but I don't think that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing every time.
What they were looking for. Yeah, this ties back to something else. Like people kept asking me on Sunday at the laundry project deal, like what went wrong and what do we fix? And they're just, it was a little bit of everything, particularly this performance. Like it was a little bit of a lack of effort. It was a little bit of depth. It was a little bit of coaching. Like it was just a little bit of everything. Everything was just a little bit off.
I also think Colorado executed really well against their defensive game plan. So they played that back five. They were able to kind of mark up on our three highest players. And then with the two like side center backs, they'd have the center one usually marked up on Zardes, and then the two on either side of him had the freedom to kind of pull into the midfield. As our attacking midfielders would receive the ball, they would often charge and kind of put pressure on there. And so I think that's part of why we struggled there. I know there's a lot of criticism of Zardes. I think when he did get opportunities in this game, he did not do well, but Colorado kept him from getting many opportunities at all, partially by putting a lot of pressure on our midfield. And also whenever you're a lone striker with three center backs around you, it's always going to be hard to get those chances, but he didn't make much of the few half chances that he did get. And so I think like all the things we talked about going wrong with Austin, with Colorado actually executing quite well against their defensive game plan and putting us under a lot of pressure, all of that was always going to lead to this offensive performance if Austin's not going to create anything for themselves in those moments.
Yeah, so I think I just saw this, like Austin created what? Was it 8 shots total?
Yeah, 8 shots total.
Very low number. I think so. Other than Colorado playing well, like what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I mean, as far as our 8 shots, yeah. I mean, I think it's just like we could not connect anything together in the final third, and so I know we've said in past episodes we've talked about there being moments where, okay, it wasn't a shot, but it was like a cross in that just missed a guy's foot, or like those dangerous moments that will not count as a shot and don't count towards XG. We weren't getting those either. There was very few dangerous moments, period, in this game. And so on the other side, like, how do you think the lack of center backs hurt Austin in this game? Because I think you could argue that outside of the CCL games, like in our league games, after that first game where Kip Keller had that terrible performance, since then with Alex Ring stepping in, I think you could argue that like we haven't really been hurt by that. And I think this game that changed a little bit.
Well, I do a little bit. It was when Austin was, do you think it hurt him defensively? Well,
I do.
Okay. I was going to say, like, I mean, it's hard. Like, just height is hard, right? Like Nick Lima and Alex Ring are not winning an aerial duel against anybody. And I don't know what the duel stats were, but I imagine they were probably not to Austin's favor. I feel like a lot of where I saw that though was like in the attack, where when you have a corner and when you're crossing the ball in, neither one of those guys are going to get up and get ahead on the ball either. I feel like Austin really missed Helio Cascante on the offensive end in those moments as much as missing his performance on defense.
Yeah. So in the post-match press conference, Wolf said that the reason he put Will Bruin on at the end instead of Urruti was because of set pieces. And I don't think he was just talking about attacking set pieces because you would see Zardes in like when they had corners, and they had a lot of corners. Zardes was in there in the mix, and he was often the biggest guy for Austin down there and won a few headers. And so if you then take him out and put in Urruti, who's not good in the air, not only do we not stand a chance on our set pieces, but we are at a disadvantage on their set pieces as well. And so I was looking at Colorado's shots. They ended up with 17 total shots. 8 of those shots came from corners. And so this is where I think when like talking about Kevin Cabral's goal at the end, there's maybe a few moments in that sequence where a true center back could have done a little bit better. But looking at all of these corners, there's so many times, I wish I would have counted this as I was watching, but so often they would play a corner in and it would go out for another corner, and another corner, a set piece would lead to a corner. And you just have to think that like if one or two more big bodies in there could help stop that bleeding a little bit and get the pressure off of us, like win one header, hit it out the other way. And it just wasn't happening. We were not winning any of those. We were not stopping them, and they just kept giving up corner after corner.
Yeah, and we've talked about this twice already, I think, and this led him to be team of the week. But like Brad Stuver's performance and like reaction on some of those is what kept this from being a loss and left Austin with 1 point. So there's two people like I feel like we talk about every week because they never end up on the stat sheet. So we're gonna have to do this again, like Gyasi Zardes and Emiliano Rigoni.
Yeah, I can't defend him in this one.
Okay, I'm willing to defend Rigoni a little bit in this one. Like I feel like he created some opportunities, but like
he also worked super hard as far as like the effort stuff. But like, yeah, I like Zardes. I think the only excuse for him is that he was getting involved in the game so infrequently that it's hard to build up any type of rhythm or anything like that. Rigoni just didn't really create a ton. It wasn't getting into these spaces. I know with him playing a little bit higher up, he maybe needed a bit more service or combination from the midfield to help create some of that, but I didn't really like what I saw from either of those guys in this game.
Yeah, I think that was a big. Obviously, the Twitter talk, right after was super negative. But again, like going back and watching it, like I think a lot of that was justified.
Yeah, I mean,
the way they played.
I think it's worth saying. I know there's not everybody. There are some people who think that by playing Urruti that all of our problems will be solved, and I do not think that he would have changed this game much either. And so like if you want to be upset about Zardes, great, but like I would not hold out hope that Maxi Urruti is going to be the guy to come in and fix all our problems either.
Is going to make a difference. That's probably fair. So maybe let's talk about the wingers then. So we had Ethan Finley on the left. You kind of talked about how he played. Rigoni on the right. We again have like a Diego Fagundes non-start, and he came in some, and I didn't think he looked particularly great. And then Josh Wolf had some, somewhat complimentary, understanding, but still like something's not quite right there kind of comments after the match. Like,
yeah.
What did you think about him?
Yeah, going back to like kind of the thing between him and Wolf, I think the way Wolf talked about it in the press conference was encouraging. It seems like Wolf is coming at it with an even head, and he had complimentary things about how Diego worked in training. So hopefully this is resolving between the two of them. As far as him coming onto the field, I think another thing that's worth noting is that Ethan Finley was playing on the left, which we've only really seen him do this year. And then when Diego came on, we would have expected maybe for him to switch back and go to the other side, but that's not what happened. Diego stayed on the right and Finley stayed on the left. I think the reason being, and I think Wolf may even said as much in the press conference, is that Finley's defensive role was still to mark Rosenberry up and down that left side. And so Wolf didn't want Diego doing that. And so he kind of took on Rigoni's role where he was defensively in that front three in the press. So the whole game is Rigoni, Sardes, and Driussi kind of leading the press. And then Finley was not involved in the press at all. He was marking Rosenberry outright, like man to man on him. And so when you bring Diego on, you can either leave him high in that press or you can have him chasing back. And so he chose to play him on his not preferred side, which is the right, but not having him chase a wing back up and down the field while he's on the field. But as far as his performance, like, again, he looks a little bit sloppy. Again, it's hard to come into a game like that where it's already a little ugly and not really have your rhythm. So always going to be tough to come into that position, but I don't think he did anything in this game necessarily to say like, oh, he'll absolutely start in the next game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. So let's talk about another winger who got in the game for like 5 minutes. It's Lord Rodney Redis, who was honestly a little bit dangerous in the amount of time he was in there.
Yeah, it's like it was not enough time. I want to say it was like 8 minutes or something like that. Not enough time to say like, oh, Rodney's definitely turning a corner, but he played well. Like, I didn't see him put a foot wrong while he was on the field, really, and got one of the more dangerous moments where he makes a nice run in behind right into the box, and Jeff Fall kind of drives in and plays him through. And so really good by Jeff Fall as well, but a good run by Rodney. He takes a nice touch and I think does just about everything he can in that moment. Yarborough's momentum, the keeper, is such where like Rodney really just has to take that shot after the touch and can't get it past Yarborough. But I thought he did really well in that moment.
Yeah, it was like one of the I think it was other than the Finley, there was Finley missed a header. There was like it was the second biggest X-goal shot on the night. Was it one that Wright took? Like, it was a good opportunity. And like, I also like to think if Rodney Redis scores a game-winning goal at Q2, does the place just like melt down from excitement? Like, does it just blow up? It's like one of those, you see those videos like the mushroom clouds that all of a sudden like appear like over the nuclear test. Like, I feel like that's what that might have been. So, I mean, yeah, maybe there's a little something there for a sub off the bench, but I was encouraged by that performance from him, especially probably more than that subgroup that all came in together. It was him, but him and Bruin and Lundqvist. I think he made the biggest difference in the match out of any of those.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it seemed like those guys were ready to come on as the goal got scored. And so after Diego Fagundes came on in, I think, the 65th minute, we actually shifted back in our offensive shape to more of like what we saw last year. So Danny was kind of playing by himself as that lone six. Gallagher was staying deeper. And then as we progressed up the field, him and Kolmanich and then him and Lundqvist would kind of stay deeper as almost like midfielders. And then the wingers were actually staying as wingers and playing wide. And so like the last 25 minutes or so, we were playing last year's attacking system and then still shifting back into that 3-4-3 defensive shape on the other side. But it looked like those defense, like you could call it maybe like defensive subs with Lundqvist coming on, that we were going to try to like maybe shut it down a little bit and play a little bit more conservatively. And then that goal happens. And it's so annoying that it happened right then that we got caught out, because the goal comes when we pushed up and had a good chance and they spring Barrios. We've got Lima and Ring back there on their own because we had pushed so high and had kind of that attacking momentum going. They get caught out, Ring gets skinned, and then Cabral makes a really nice little just like fake out move in the box to kind of lose Lima in Lima's peripheral vision there. And Barrios does well to find him. Cabral does well to finish. So just, it came at a really unfortunate moment.
Well, we've talked about Jafal a little bit. Like, I thought he looked pretty good. And
yeah, I mean,
wait, I was going to say, I think he looked relatively good. Like, like Johan Valencia looked like he less of the field is more for him. Like, he did not have a great performance. So I think it was just compared to what we got from Valencia. I feel like Jafal did well. And I feel like it took him a little bit to get in touch with the game. Like, early on, he was disconnected and all, but I feel like he settled into it a little bit. And I think given the choice, hopefully we'll have Owen Wolf back a lot, and it won't matter that much. But I think given the choice, I'd rather see more of Jafal than Valencia going forward.
Yeah, I think Jafal just has, like, his skill set is such that in certain moments he can create more offensively than Valencia like ever will do. Because again, I thought Valencia played like pretty cleanly. I don't remember a moment where he gave a ball away or anything like that, but I also don't remember a moment where he ever actually like created something or did anything dangerous.
Yeah, I remember moments with him like getting a ball and turning around and immediately passing it backward to somebody else. Like, I remember those moments. Like, he's such a one-way player that I think it's difficult for a team with like ambition to have somebody that's so much that way.
Yeah, and what I was saying, like, when our only goal scoring opportunities come off of somebody beating a guy in the midfield and making that backline scramble, Johan Valencia is never going to do that. And so, like, if that's the plan, that can't be the plan with Johan Valencia in the midfield. You have to do something different when he's in there, because he's never going to take a guy on. He's never going to make anybody scramble. He's going to receive the ball, play it quickly. To his credit, he receives it and plays it quickly, but it's going to be sideways or 6 yards forward, and that's about it.
So, is there anybody else you want to talk about before we briefly cover what sits in front of us? Is there any other like interesting notes or players you want to go over?
No, I don't. I think we can kind of look ahead. So we have a bye week, which I think comes at a good time. That means Bisonen's going to come back. Wolf's going to come back. They'll have some time to rest before having to play another game. The whole team will have some time to rest and like regroup and maybe try to fix some things before going away to LAFC. So the schedule does not get easier from here on out. So these next 2 weeks are going to be really important for this team. And I think Josh Wolf and the team need to really take advantage of this time, because things are not working right now. I know we said last week it was too soon to panic. I think it's still too soon to panic, but it's maybe not too soon to be a little bit concerned.
What I wrote this into the outline. Can I be alarmed without being an alarmist? That's where I am right now. Like, I am alarmed. I don't want to be an alarmist, but it's good. The upside that I keep going back to is Austin is still sitting 6th in the West, which is firmly in a playoff position. And I don't think all that far off of where Austin was afterward, but I think this LA match coming up on the road is like the thing that's kind of scary, because like one would not expect Austin to pick up points, although stranger things have happened clearly for this team in LA in the past. So it's going to be challenging.
And then the schedule after that's not all that easy either. So we have Vancouver at home, which Vancouver is not in great form right now. But then we go back to LA and play the Galaxy. We have San Jose at home. We know how San Jose can be and how the games against Austin have been historically. Then we go to Portland. Portland is a team that we've given trouble before, and they've also given us trouble before. It kind of seems like it's going to go one of those teams' ways in those games. And then after that, Dallas, after that, Seattle, after that, Toronto, after that, Houston again. So it's not an easy stretch of games coming up. So we really do need to figure something out, because it's not going to get easier. And like, if you hit this string of games and keep playing the way that they've been playing, we're going to get to panic mode to a line where it is like, I'd say, okay, now it's time to panic. Like, that could come really fast.
Yeah. We'll have lots to talk about leading up to all of that, without a doubt.
Anything else to cover, Jeremiah?
No, I think let's go ahead and wrap it up a little bit, and we can tease. You want to tease next week now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So we have one Bradley Stuver. He's going to be on the show next week. We're interviewing him today in listener time for most of you. Tomorrow for those of us right now. But we're really excited about having him back on for. This is the 3rd year in a row, correct?
Yeah, 3rd time. Backup goalkeeper Brad Stuver.
Backup goalkeeper. Have we told this story about having him on the first time on air?
I think so.
Okay.
about
Okay.
like how like why we
About why we
asked to have him.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, I think we essentially reached out to the club as like our first player interview. It's like, okay, a guy who's like doing stuff in the community. He's the backup keeper, so they're probably not going to be too precious about him. And that's why we went after him. He ends up being one of the best keepers in the league for the next 3 seasons. But that's always going to be the joke, is like we'll introduce him as backup keeper Brad Stuver.
And if you ever like question our ability to make good predictions, I think even after we interviewed him, we were both like, "Do you think there's really a goalkeeper competition?" It's like, no, it's going to be Tarbell, which luckily for everybody, the Austin FC front office is better at evaluating player talent than you and I are, because like he's been amazing and an amazing human and has a wonderful wife and family. And so like we're very excited to have him back on and talk about some soccer stuff and talk about some non-soccer fun stuff. And so it should be a really good interview next week.
Yeah, hopefully we can use some of the dirt that his parents gave us yesterday on on the interview with him. All right, before we finish up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Again, until the end of this month, so I think that's on Saturday. If you leave us a written review on whatever platform you use, we're going to donate $5 to the Laundry Project. And then if you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter at LViajero87, JBentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then sign up for the Patreon. I know we've been saying this for way too long now, but we are going to, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll kind of start our Patreon member drive for 2023. We'll have some photos of the merch we've been working on, and kind of give you an idea of what those rewards are going to be for this year. And then, as always, we'd like to encourage you to visit the Striker website, where you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower23 with a capital M. Jeremiah, what should folks look out for there?
There's a great interview from Phil West. I'm a little bit annoyed that it's like a Phil West interview and not a part of Moon Tower Soccer, but he talked to Joe Lowry kind of about what's going on with Austin FC. So the headline is "Blame Pep Guardiola, a conversation about Austin FC with Joe Lowry," which is a great headline from Phil, which I'm not at all surprised by. But if you really want to get deep into some of the things that have been going on and maybe some of the ways that Austin can fix it, I would encourage everybody to check that out.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a preview of the LAFC match, also with that Brad Stuver interview. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.